Chapter 4. The Scene. A scene is the smallest meaningful unit of a story. A long video is not a single continuous block of information. It is a chain of scenes connected together. A film, a documentary, or a YouTube episode all operate according to this same principle. The fundamental difference between a beginner creator and a director is not the length of the video. It is the way they think about structure. Creators tend to think in terms of a 15-minute video. Directors think in terms of scenes because viewers do not experience a video as one uniform piece. What they actually experience is one scene at a time. The anatomy of a scene. Every strong scene contains 4 fundamental elements. They may not always be obvious, but they are present within the narrative design. 1. Context. Context answers a simple question: where are we and what is happening? It allows the viewer to understand the reality they are entering. Without context, a scene feels disconnected and directionless. 2. Intention. Intention defines the goal of the scene. What is trying to be accomplished? What problem is being solved? What is being built, tested, explored, or understood? Without intention, actions feel random. 3. Obstacle or uncertainty. This is one of the most important elements in all storytelling. What could go wrong? What do we still not know? What is at stake? Uncertainty is the engine of attention. Without uncertainty, sustained interest disappears. POC 4. Result. The result answers the final question of the scene. What did we discover? What ultimately happened? What changed as a consequence of the action? A practical example. Imagine a scene about installing a low tunnel in a garden. The scene could be structured like this. Context: winter is approaching. Intention: protect the lettuce from frost. Uncertainty: it is unclear whether the system will be sufficient. Result: the low tunnel is successfully installed. With these 4 elements, a complete narrative scene already exists. The fatal mistake. One of the most common mistakes in video creation is showing only results. The creator arrives at a location, shows what was done, explains what happened, and then moves on to the next section. In the process, one essential ingredient disappears: uncertainty. Without uncertainty, attention declines. The narrative loses tension. The viewer stops anticipating what might happen next. Why uncertainty matters. Uncertainty is one of the primary fuels of audiovisual storytelling. Think about any sport. The excitement exists because the outcome is unknown. If the result were already known from the beginning, much of the interest would vanish. What sustains attention is not only what happens, it is the possibility that something different could happen. The power of "we don't know yet." There is a particularly powerful phrase in storytelling: "we don't know yet." This idea keeps viewers engaged in the experience because it creates anticipation, because it opens a question, because it delays resolution. Will it work? We don't know yet. Will the plants survive the frost? We don't know yet. Will the crop thrive? We don't know yet. As long as that uncertainty exists, attention remains active. Building documentary scenes. In documentary-style content and real-world storytelling, there is a useful framework for constructing scenes intentionally. It can be summarized like this: observation, decision, action, result. Reflection. Observation: a condition or situation is identified. For example, the weather is becoming extremely cold. Decision: a response to that situation is chosen. For example, build a low tunnel for protection. Action: the decision is put into practice. The structure is built. Result: the immediate effect of the action is observed. The low tunnel is now in place. Reflection: a deeper layer of meaning is introduced. A future expectation or question emerges. For example, will it actually extend the growing season? And with that, a new narrative question is born. The difference between recording and storytelling. If a video is structured only as a sequence of actions, it may succeed as information, but it may lack narrative tension. When each segment is built as an answer to a question, the video gains an entirely different dimension. It stops being a simple description of events. It becomes an exploration of something being discovered. The difference appears subtle. In practice, it is enormous. The director's assignment. Before filming any scene, pause and examine its narrative structure. Every scene should be expressible as a single question. What is this scene trying to solve? What uncertainty is it addressing? What are we trying to discover? If that question can be stated clearly, the scene has direction. If it cannot, the narrative structure probably has not yet been defined. When every scene serves a clear purpose within a larger question, editing stops being a process of organizing random footage. Instead, it becomes the natural construction of a coherent story. Chapter 5: Rhythm. Today, we explore a concept that is often misunderstood and incorrectly attributed to editing alone. It is common to hear phrases such as, "This video has great pacing," or "This video feels slow," as if rhythm depended entirely on the speed of the cuts or the number of edits within a video. But that interpretation is incomplete. The biggest YouTube misconception. There is a widespread belief: more cuts equal more retention. But this is not necessarily true. Some videos contain an enormous number of cuts and still feel exhausting to watch. At the same time, there are documentaries with very slow visual pacing that hold attention for extended periods. This leads us to a fundamental question. What is rhythm really? Rhythm as change in interest. Rhythm is not the speed of the images. Rhythm is the speed at which the viewer's interest changes. This distinction is essential for understanding audiovisual storytelling. It is not about how often the shot changes. It is about how often the viewer's thoughts, emotions, or expectations change. Rhythm happens in the viewer's mind, not inside the camera. A simple example. Imagine a single static shot. One image, no cuts. Within that shot, a process unfolds: a seed, a sprout, a leaf, then another, eventually a flower. This sequence has rhythm, despite having no cuts at all. Because there is transformation, there is change, there is development. Now imagine the opposite. 20 rapid cuts showing essentially the same thing. The sense of rhythm decreases because there is no genuine progress, no transformation, no meaningful change. The law of change. The human brain needs to perceive change in order to maintain attention. These changes can occur on many different levels. Changes in information, changes in emotion, changes in location, changes in energy, changes in perspective. When nothing changes for too long, attention naturally begins to decline. For this reason, one of the most important questions a director can ask is, what has changed in the last 30 seconds? The 4 sources of rhythm. There are 4 primary ways to create rhythm within a video. These appear repeatedly in effective storytelling. 1. Change of location. Movement through space creates a feeling of progress. A story may move between different environments: a vegetable garden, a low tunnel, a greenhouse, a forest, a workshop. Each change of location introduces a new narrative stage. Change of activity. Rhythm also emerges when what people are doing changes. Observe planting, transplanting, building, testing, comparing, measuring. Each activity introduces a different dynamic. 3. Change of question. One of the most powerful sources of rhythm comes from shifting narrative questions. One question is answered, a new question appears. This mechanism keeps curiosity alive. As long as the audience wants to know what comes next, attention remains active. Emotional change. Rhythm is also built through emotional variation. Surprise, doubt, satisfaction, hope, frustration, wonder. Viewers do not simply watch actions. They move through emotional states. And those emotional transitions create rhythm. What happens in many gardening videos? One of the most common challenges in process-based content is the gap between the creator's experience and the viewer's experience. The creator may be living through many different activities, making decisions, solving problems, switching tools, adjusting methods, testing ideas. But viewers do not automatically perceive that diversity. To them, everything may appear as one continuous activity, a long stretch of work with no obvious changes. That is why the director's job is to make change visible. You cannot assume that viewers will automatically interpret it for themselves. The tool of invisible chapters. A highly effective storytelling strategy is to divide content into distinct stages. These stages do not need to be announced explicitly. The audience simply feels that the story is progressing through phases. Every so often, something happens that signals a new narrative moment. For example, in an agricultural project or an experiment, the stages might include an initial assessment of the system, a testing or intervention phase, a period of adjustments and preparation, an observation period under specific conditions, a final evaluation. Each stage has its own identity. Even without formal chapter breaks, the audience senses forward movement. The boredom thermometer. There is a simple question that can be used to evaluate any sequence during planning or editing. Is this scene advancing or is it repeating? When a scene advances, it provides new information, changes the situation, or introduces a meaningful variation. When a scene merely repeats what the audience already understands, its narrative value begins to decline. Unnecessary repetition is one of the most common causes of lost attention. An observation about creative projects. Projects built around dynamic environments, such as gardens, farms, ecological systems, workshops, or long-term experiments, often face a particular challenge. The problem is rarely a lack of content. More often, it is an abundance of content. When everything is constantly changing, the challenge is no longer deciding what to show. The challenge becomes deciding what to leave out. That is the essence of directing, choosing what belongs in the narrative experience and what does not need to be included. The central idea of rhythm. If this entire lesson could be reduced to a single idea, it would be this. Rhythm does not come from cutting faster. It comes from making the audience feel that they are moving forward. Rhythm emerges when the experience feels like a process unfolding. When viewers sense that something is changing, attention remains active. When everything feels repetitive, attention begins to fade. Chapter conclusion. The next step in developing this narrative framework is understanding how individual episodes connect to one another within a larger series. Because a good video can generate a single view, but a well-designed series accomplishes something far more valuable. It gives viewers a reason to come back again and again to continue the story.